this is Mama's Mad Ideas, and I'm here today with you with another video. In today's video, I will be teaching you how to do the granny square blanket. Okay guys, so I know it's been a couple of days since I saw you last, but I had a few loose ends to tie up for the last week of school. Many of you may know that I teach second grade, so I had several things I needed to do to get prepared for the end of the school year. But I'm here now with you, and hopefully I will be able to post on a regular basis so I can get out content that you really do enjoy. So hang tight and we're getting ready to start. Okay, so this will be the first project for the beginners crochet series, and for this particular project you will need a couple of different colors of yarn. For my project in particular, I'm going to use just 2 colors. You can choose to use as many colors as you would like. I am going to teach you how to change colors today. We're going to start off with some very simple stitches. All of the stitches that we will be using today are featured in the Beginners Crochet Series videos that I have posted. What you will need for today's project is your choice of yarn. You can choose to use as many colors as you would like. I'm going to be using red heart yarn, and also you're going to need a pair of scissors. Any type of scissors will do. And also you're going to need a crochet hook. Now today I'm going to be using a size G6 crochet hook, and I chose to change the size of my hook because I want my stitches to be a little bit smaller. In all my previous videos I have been using the size I crochet hook, but today, since I'm doing this project and I want my stitches to be a little tighter, I'm going to drop down to a smaller size hook. Now you can use the size hook that is comfortable for you and also to the size you want your blanket to be. Now if you want a looser blanket, you're going to want to go up to a larger size. If you want a tighter blanket, you're going to want to go down to a smaller size hook. But today I will be using a size G6 crochet hook. Hey guys, remember, if you need a little bit more time with this new technique, you can always pause the video and go back and rewind. So let's get ready to get started and have some fun. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is get ready to make that slip stitch on our hook. So let's go ahead and make our slip knot. Remember, if you need a refresher on making the slip knot, you can always go back and watch some of the previous Crochet Beginners videos. Okay, so I have my slip knot on my hook. Now watch very carefully. The next thing you're going to do is to chain 4. So we go 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now we have crocheted 4 chain stitches, and if we count, we'll see 1, 2, 3, 4. Then the next step will be, we're going to take our hook and we're going to take it and we're going to put it in that very first stitch at the bottom that we created, and it's right here, and you're just going to go through the top of that stitch, put the crochet hook in, and then you're going to take your yarn and you're going to wrap it and you're going to pull it through both loops. And essentially what you're doing is making like a little hole right here. You just made a loop. So you have a hole in the center now. You're going to be working from this hole also. So now that you have made this hole right here, if you spread it open, you can see inside of it. What you're going to do is you're going to chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. Now that you chain 3, this 3 is going to count for your first double crochet. You're going to wrap your yarn from back to front. You're going to stick it in the center of that hole that you made. You're going to wrap your yarn, pull up a loop, and you now have 3 loops on your hook. You're going to wrap your yarn from back to front. You're going to go under 2, and then you're going to go under 2 more. You now have 2 double crochets. All right, Everybody with me? Remember, you can always stop and go back and rewind. So the next thing you're going to do, you're going to wrap your yarn around your hook. You're going to go back through that center hole. Your hook is laying on top of your yarn. You turn and you pull up a loop. You now have 3 loops on your hook. Remember, we're working on this smooth part. You wrap your yarn, go under 2, wrap your yarn, and go under 2 more. You have now created 3 double crochet chains. So the thing about the granny square, we're going to be building a square and we're going to be making corners. So now we're about to make our first corner. So you're going to chain 2. So that's 1 and that's 2. So this is going to be a corner, and you will be able to see that corner a little bit better when we do our second row. So remember, we're still working inside of this hole right here that we created. So we're going to our next set of shells. These 3 double crochet chains stand for a shell stitch. So we're going to make our next shell stitch. So we're going to double crochet into this center hole 3 times. So this is 1 double crochet. We wrap our yarn around our hook, go back into that center hole. That's 2 double crochets. We wrap our yarn around our hook and go back into that center hole. And now we have 3 double crochets on our hook. So we've created another shell stitch. So next we will be chaining 2 to make the next corner. That's 1 and 2. And as you go, you can just turn your work to what's comfortable for you. So now we're going to make another set of shell stitches, and the shell stitches consist of 3 double crochet chains. So we're going to wrap our yarn from back to front. We're going to go through that center hole that we created. We're going to pull up a loop, wrap our yarn from back to front and go under 2, wrap our yarn and go under 2 more. That's the first double crochet chain. Now we're going to have to do 2 more. So we wrap our yarn, go back through the center hole, pull up a loop, and we're going to wrap our yarn under 2, wrap our yarn and go under 2 more. We've now created the second double crochet chain. So we need to do 1 more. We wrap our yarn from back to front, we go through the hole, pull up a loop, go under 2, wrap our yarn and go under 2 more. We've now created the third shell stitch. So now we need to make another corner. So we're going to chain 2. That's 1 and that's 2. Now we're going to create the 4th shell stitch, which consists of 3 double crochet chains. So we wrap our yarn, we go through the hole, pull up a loop, go under 2, wrap our yarn and go under 2 more. Pull a little yarn out of my skein, and we need to create 2 more double crochet chains. So we're going to wrap our yarn, go through the hole, pull up a loop, go under 2, wrap our yarn and go under 2 more. We're going to wrap our yarn, go through the loop, pull up a chain, go under 2, then go under 2 more. All right. So the last corner, we need to create our last corner. So we're going to chain 2. So that's 1 and that's 2. Now once you get back to the beginning where you started, you're going to want to slip stitch inside of the top of this first double crochet chain that you created. So what you're going to do is very simple. All you do is take the tip of your hook and place it in the top of the 3rd crochet chain, and then you're going to pull up a loop, and then you're going to just slip it through the loop that's on the hook, and you made a slip stitch. So essentially you've created 4 corners. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you've created 4 shell patterns. Okay, if you need to go back and rewind, please do so. Keep repeating this until you get it how you want it. So the next thing you're going to do, we're going to start round 2. The next thing you're going to do is to chain 3. We're going to start over just like we started. So that's 1, 2, 3. So this will be the first double crochet of our shell stitch. So now in this same corner, we're going to chain double crochet 2 more. So that's 1, and this is 2. Okay, so you just created a shell pattern right there in that corner. The very next thing you're going to do when you get over top of this shell pattern, you're going to chain 1. And when I first started learning how to crochet, what I would do, I would get me some notebook paper and a pen or a pencil, and I would take notes as I went, and I would write down directions in terms that I would understand. So as you're watching the video, pause the video and stop and jot down notes so you can understand what it is that you need to do next. And that was easier for me to actually see the physical directions written down on paper. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to chain 1. Now every time you get to the shell cluster, the shell pattern, you're going to chain 1 over top of that. So we just chained 1. And now we're working into our corner. So this is what you do when you get to a corner. So you're going to wrap your yarn from back to front. You're going to go through the corner loop, pull up a stitch, go under 2, and then you're going to go under 2 more. You're going to wrap your yarn, pull up a loop, go under 2, and then go under 2 more. Wrap your yarn, pull up a loop, go under 2, then go under 2 more. All right, so in your corners, you're always going to have a set of 2 shell stitches. And 2 shell stitches is going to consist of 6 double chains. Okay, it'll be 6 double chains, and also when you're making your corners, you're going to also remember to chain 2. So I just created that first shell cluster. Now I'm going to chain 2. That's 1 and 2. So as I turn my work, I'm going to want to put 1 more shell cluster in this corner. That's going to complete my corner. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to wrap my yarn, go under 2, and go under 2 more, and I created another double crochet chain. I wrap my yarn, go back through that corner, go under 2, then go under 2 more. I wrap my yarn, go through the hole of the corner and pull up a loop, go under 2, and then go under 2 more. And as you can see, we've just created a corner. And it's okay if it's not perfect. This does take a little bit of practice, but once you get it, this pattern right here is like one of those foundational patterns for crocheters. This is the basic pattern. You can do so many things with making a granny square stitch. You can make clothing, you can make covers, bedspreads, blankets, all kinds of things, pillows. So once you learn this stitch, this is a really useful stitch to learn and know. And this is the very first stitch that I learned how to do over 26 years ago. So when you get to that next shell cluster, you're gonna want to put one chain right over top of that. Remember, each time that you get to a cluster, you're gonna chain one. So we chained one, and now we're gonna be working in our corner again. So remember, a corner is always gonna consist of 2 sets of shell clusters and then 2 chains separating those clusters. So we're now in the next corner. So we're going to wrap our yarn from back to front, go through the corner, pull up a loop, go under 2, wrap our yarn, and go under 2 more. We're going to wrap our yarn from back to front, go through the corner, pull up a loop, go under 2, wrap our yarn from back to front, and go under 2 more. Wrap our yarn from back to front, go through the corner, pull up a loop, go under 2, and go under 2 more. All right, and remember, with crocheting, if you need to take it apart, it's easy to pick back up where you left off. Chain 2, 1, 2. We're going to wrap our yarn, and we're going to go through that same corner 3 more times. So that's 1, that's 2, and this is 3. All right, so we've now created another corner. Do you see how that's starting to begin to form and look like a square? This is how you begin your granny square afghan or blanket. That's how you begin your granny square. All right, so now we're on top of the next shell pattern. And so what do? We chain 1. So we're going to chain 1. And now we're ready to work in our next corner. Remember, that's 2 sets of shell stitches. So we're going to double chain 3 times in this next corner. That's 1. Wrap our yarn. That's 2. And that's 3. Now, after you make that first shell cluster, you're going to want to chain 2. 1, 2. Okay, so a lot of times when you're crocheting, you'll look at your work and you'll be like, oh no, I only made 1 set of shell clusters in the corner. But you can easily go back and take that loose. Just check your work every so often, and check for mistakes. That way you don't have to take so much of your work loose if you make a mistake. Okay, so we just chained 2, and now we need to make 1 more shell cluster in this same corner to complete our corner. So we're gonna pull up a loop, go under 2, go under 2 more. That's our first double crochet chain. We're gonna repeat that 2 more times. That's 2, and this is 3. How does it feel to be crocheting your first project? All right, so we're going to crochet, we're going to single chain 1 time over top of this shell right here. So we're going to make 1 single chain right here. And then we're going to go to the next corner, and we're going to put our last shell cluster in this corner. Because remember, when we started, we already had 1 set. So that's 1. This is 2. And this is 3. All right, so remember, when you get to your corners, what do? You chain 2 after that first shell cluster. So that's 1 and 2. Now, when you get back to the beginning, you're going to want to do exactly what you did the first time. You're going to find that third stitch at the top of your double crochet chain, and you're going to slip stitch right through that. You're going to pull that loop right through both, and you're going to close that corner in. So now you have your 4 corners. Then what you're going to do next, we're going to be ready now for our next round. I'm going to chain 3, start off our double crochet chain shell cluster. So that's 1, 2, and 3. Now we're going to double crochet 2 more times right there in that corner. So that's 1. And that's 2. All right, so we've just started the beginning of our 3rd round. So we're going to do this round one more time, and then I'm going to show you how to change colors. So I'm going to chain 1. Now, if you'll notice, each round gets a little bit bigger. This is the pattern throughout the entire project. You can make this blanket or Afghan as large as you want. You can use your choice of yarn, your choice of hook. The thing about the granny square is very versatile, so you can alternate it and change it up, switch it up however you would like. We can also add some decorations, add some fringes to the end of our project, but we'll decide on that by the end of the project, because I'm going to be with you throughout this project. I'm going to give you some time to work on this stitch, and I'm going to meet you back on Wednesday, and we're going to take a look and update and see how our project is going, and see if we want to add some tassels or something like that, and I can show you how to do that. But today I am going to show you how to change colors, and you can decide how you want to change the colors of your Afghan. You can also choose to get the variegated yarn, which has multiple colors already in the yarn. Okay, so back to this project. We've already chained 1, so now we're going to go right into this next space, and we're going to make our shell stitch cluster. So remember, it's 3 double crochet chains that compile as 1 shell cluster. So now we have 1 in the middle. Now remember, every time you come across the shell cluster, you're going to chain 1. So there's our chain 1. And now we're working in the corner. Whenever you come to a corner, it's going to always consist of 2 sets of shell stitch clusters and 2 chains in the corner so you can turn it. Okay, so let's do our first shell stitch cluster. So that's 1, 2, and 3. Now for that corner, you're going to chain 2. 1, 2. Now we have to add another shell stitch cluster. So that's 1, 2, and 3. All right, so now we're over top of a shell cluster, and we're going to chain 1. We're going to go right into this space, this next space, and we're going to put another shell cluster. Every time you come to a space, you're going to be increasing and adding a new shell cluster. And each round you go, you'll add an additional shell cluster. It will keep getting larger and larger. So now remember, we're over top of a cluster, so we chain 1. Don't forget to make your chains, because if you forget to make your chains, then your sizing will be off and your blanket will not be in a square. So we chained 1, and now we're going to our corner. 2 shell clusters, remember. So I'm working on my first one. Now we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to make our second shell cluster. All right, so next what we want to do is chain 1, and now we're working in that next space and making a shell cluster. We're over top of a shell cluster, so we're going to chain 1, and now we're back to our corner. So we're going to make 2 sets of shell clusters in this corner. Now we're going to chain 2, and we're going to complete that corner with another cluster. All right, and this is what we have so far. Okay, so now we are over top of a shell cluster, and we're going to chain 1, and we're going to go to that next space, and we're going to make our cluster. Sometimes your yarn may split, but you can always go back and pick it up, just like I just did. So next you're going to chain 1, and then we're working in this next corner. We're going to just complete that corner, and then we're going to change colors. So that's 1, 2, and 3. We're going to chain 2 to complete our turn. We're going to slip stitch in the top of this 3rd chain right here. And then I'm going to come through this next loop and pull up my loop, and I'm going to stop right there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you how to change colors. I'm going to need to take my hook out of my loop for just a second. And if you'll notice that your working end of your yarn, this is how I'm going to show you a very simple way for starting off for beginners, how to change. I will show you in part 2 how to weave in your loose ends once you do your work. But for today's purpose of this video, I'm going to show you with the crochet hook. There's several different ways to weave in your loose ends of your yarn. So right now I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to simply just cut. I'm not going to cut too close, but I'm going to give myself enough space to weave in my loose ends. So about 10 inches. Okay, so I just cut my working end of my yarn, and now I have a little granny square swatch, and now I'm going to change colors. I'm going to use gray. I did have someone to request a baby girl blanket, so this may be the beginning of that blanket. I am not sure yet, 100% sure, but I'm just going to work with these 2 colors, plus these 2 colors are really pretty together. So to change the colors, I have my free end that I cut, and I have my loop right here, and I'm going to work right into this loop. So I'm going to stick my crochet hook right back into that loop that I was working with the first color, and I'm going to pull it tight. Then I'm going to take the new color. I have a free end right here. This is the loose end. So I'm just simply going to take this yarn and lay it on top of my hook and pull it through. I'm going to show you one more time in case you didn't catch it, and try to zoom in on that. So I'm going to take the loose end. I'm going to lay it right on top of the hook. I'm holding it, and I'm just pulling it through that loop on the pink end. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull down and tighten up both pieces. And remember, you're not working with the loose end now, but you're working with the working end of the yarn, the one that's attached to the skein. So now we're ready to begin our next round. So we're going to simply just chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and we just changed our color. Remember, when you're doing your corners, I'm going to want to add 2 more to that same corner, and it's the exact same thing what you did before. So I'm going to just make sure all those loose ends, I'm holding them down in the back with my finger so they can stay out of the way, and I'm pulling up me a loop, going under 2, and then going under 2 more. All right, so I'm going to do that again and create my first shell pattern with my new color. So I have just changed my color. I'm now working with pink and gray. I'm going to chain 1 because I'm over top of a shell, and now I'm going to be working in this next space. So I'm going to make my shell pattern. That's 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1, and you're going to make 3 double crochet chains in this next space. So we're going to chain 2 and going to complete that corner. Okay, so now we're over top of the next shell. We're going to chain 1, and then we're going to go right to this next space and put another shell stitch in there. And our shell stitches count for 3 double crochet chains. All right, chain 1, we're over top of a shell stitch. So now we're going into this next space. And then we're going to chain 1. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to be working in our corner, which is going to consist of 2 groups of shell stitches. So we're going to go ahead and make our first shell stitch. So that's 3 double crochet chains. We're going to chain 2 to make that corner turn, and then we're going to make another set of shell stitches, which is 3 double crochet chains. All right, so we got our next corner. Now we're going to chain 1 right on top of this shell stitch, and we're going into the very next space. All right, so now we're going to chain 1, and now we're going into the very next space. All right, so we have now made another cluster, and we're almost back around to the end. So we're going to chain 1. We're going to complete this last corner with another shell stitch. So that's 1, 2, and 3. We're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and now we're going to connect our yarn in the top of that 3rd crochet loop at the top, just as we did in the previous rounds. We're going to go under this last stitch right here. All right, so we just finished that corner. We've changed our colors. We have our loop on our hook, and when I'm stopping, I usually will just take my yarn and pull it through some. So now I want to show you on the back in your loose ends. So you're going to have a lot of loose ends on the back. once you crochet. And what I usually do, there's several different ways you can weave your loose ends through your work. You can get you a plastic darning needle or a metal darning needle, and you can thread it. You can weave the loose ends throughout these holes, and I always try to match up the colors. Or you can take your crochet hook. Now what I do is I just simply take my crochet hook and I weave it through the yarn. I'll wrap my yarn and I'll sort of like just pull it through. I really don't like to tie knots in my work. I like to more so pull the work through the yarn to weave it in. And it's very simple. And this way it kind of locks it in place. And then at the end you can cut your loose ends. So I just weave it in and make sure it's in good. And once it's weaved in, then you can snip it. To me, this is a better technique than just cutting it. So now what we want to do is just snip it. Okay? So now you've weaved in your loose ends. You can also weave in the beginning one. You want to make sure you do this pretty securely so it doesn't come loose. Once you've washed your blanket a couple of times, it will mesh the yarn together pretty good, and then you really don't have to worry about it coming loose. So once you do that, you can now snip your yarn, and there you go. So that's an easy way to weave in your loose ends when you're just starting. Some people choose to tie a knot. You know, you can tie a knot if that's what you choose to do, if knots don't bother you. You can also get a darning needle and sew the loose ends that way. But for today's purpose, I did just use the crochet hook to weave in the yarn. So this is what you will do. You will continue to just make your rounds. And the next round will be the chain 3, and then the 2 more double crochets in the same space to create that first shell. And then you will go on around the blanket in your desired colors until you get the size that you desire. So I'm going to meet you back later on this week, and we're going to see how you did. Please don't forget to leave me a comment down in the comment section if you have any questions or concerns about these stitches. I'll be more than happy, to discuss them with you. Don't forget to share this video. Please share my videos. Help get my numbers up. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Take care, stay blessed, and I will see you again soon in my next video. Bye-bye.